On a quiet suburban morning, a little girl named Mia dashes out of her house, tears streaming down her face. She runs to Sam, the neighborhood's garbage collector, and clutches his uniform, begging for help. Just moments later, the street is swarming with police, uncovering a harrowing truth that had been hidden in plain sight. What happens next will leave everyone speechless. Sam was no stranger to hard work. A seasoned garbage collector, he took pride in his job, knowing his efforts kept the community clean and functioning. He had worked this route for years, familiar with every street, every corner, and even the faces of the residents. Among those faces was Mia, a quiet and curious little girl he often saw playing in her front yard while her mother, Emily, tended to their small garden. Mia's innocent wave and shy smile were a highlight of Sam's mornings. Over time, he'd noticed the subtle details of their family. Emily always seemed a little hurried, a little tense, and her smiles often looked forced. Still, Mia's carefree demeanor gave Sam the impression that things were fine, even if not perfect. But today was different. As Sam drove his truck down the street, the rhythmic hum of the engine was interrupted by the sight of Mia sprinting toward him. Her small hands clutched at his uniform, her voice trembling as she said, "Please, you have to help. Something bad is happening at home." Taken aback, Sam immediately knelt to her level. "What's wrong, Mia? Where's your mum?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with concern. Mia's eyes darted back to her house, and her small frame trembled as she whispered, "It's my stepdad. He's yelling at Mum again. Please, hurry." Sam's heart sank. He'd noticed tension in Mia's family before, the hurried looks, the hushed arguments. But he had never imagined it was this serious. Without hesitation, he took her hand and followed her toward the house, his mind racing with worry. He couldn't ignore the desperation in her voice or the fear in her eyes. As they approached, the tension in the air was palpable. The front door was slightly ajar, and raised voices could be heard from inside. Sam's steps faltered as he caught the sound of glass shattering, followed by Emily's pleading voice. Mia tugged at his hand, her eyes filled with urgency. Sam knocked firmly on the door. Moments later, Emily appeared. Her disheveled hair, tear-streaked face, and the faint bruise on her arm told a story she seemed desperate to hide. "Oh, hi, Sam," she said, forcing a strained smile. "Is something wrong?" Before Sam could respond, a loud crash echoed from inside, making Emily flinch. Her eyes darted nervously, and she whispered, "You should go. Everything's fine." Sam frowned, his instincts telling him otherwise. "Emily, are you sure? Mia came to me for help. She's scared, and frankly, you look scared too." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but before she could say anything, a man's voice roared from inside. "Emily, who are you talking to?" A burly figure appeared behind her, his face twisted in anger. "What's he doing here?" the man snarled, glaring at Sam. His voice was loud enough to make Mia jump. Sam stood his ground. "Mia asked me to come. She's worried about her mum." The man's expression darkened, and he took a threatening step forward. Sensing the escalating danger, Sam pulled out his phone and discreetly dialed 911, relaying the situation to the operator while keeping his voice steady. "The police are on their way," he said firmly, hoping the announcement would de-escalate the situation. Instead, the stepfather's rage boiled over. "You've got no right to interfere," he shouted, shoving Emily aside. But before he could get closer, the sound of sirens filled the air, signaling the arrival of the police. Within moments, patrol cars lined the street, their flashing lights cutting through the morning calm as officers poured out, their presence commanding attention. The stepfather, now panicked, took a faltering step back, his face pale with shock. "This is a mistake," he shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. But as he turned to retreat into the house, officers swiftly intercepted him, forming a wall of authority he could not penetrate. He resisted arrest, shouting obscenities and hurling baseless accusations. "You can't do this! I know my rights!" he bellowed, his struggles growing more frantic. But his resistance was no match for the trained officers, who subdued him with practiced precision, locking handcuffs around his wrists. The sound of the metal snapping into place seemed to punctuate the tension, drawing murmurs from the growing crowd of neighbors gathering outside. Mia clung tightly to Sam, her small body trembling as she watched the stepfather being led away. Relief washed over her face, though fear still lingered in her wide eyes. Sam bent down to her level, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay now, Mia. They're here to help," he said softly. Inside the house, officers moved with purpose, each room revealing more of the grim reality that had been hidden within. Broken furniture, shattered glass, and scattered belongings painted a vivid picture of chaos and violence. One officer's voice called out from the back of the house, "We've got a locked room here." Another officer quickly joined him, their combined efforts forcing the door open to reveal a chilling scene. The air was heavy with the smell of neglect, a mix of stale air, mildew, and decay. Dirty clothes were piled high in one corner, alongside empty food containers and forgotten toys. A small bed with torn sheets stood against the wall, its disheveled state a silent testament to the suffering endured within those walls. In one corner, a pile of unused toys and neatly folded children's clothes added an eerie touch, as though someone had tried to maintain an illusion of normalcy. "It's like they were trying to keep up appearances," one officer murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. Another officer found a journal, its pages filled with the scrawled, desperate words of Emily, documenting months of abuse and isolation. "We've got evidence," the officer confirmed, his tone grim. Meanwhile, outside, Emily and Mia were escorted to safety. Emily clung to her daughter, her hands trembling as she whispered reassurances. "It's over," she kept saying, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. But it was unclear whether she was trying to convince her daughter or herself. Sam stood nearby, his protective presence offering them a sense of security. He watched as the officers brought out bags of evidence, each item a piece of the puzzle that had trapped Emily and Mia in their nightmare. The neighbors, drawn by the commotion, lined the sidewalks. Some whispered in shock, their faces pale as they pieced together the story unfolding before them. Others murmured in guilt, realizing they had ignored the warning signs for far too long. Amid the murmurs, a young man in the crowd, a neighbor who had once dismissed the sounds of arguments as family squabbles, stepped forward. "I should have said something," he muttered, his voice heavy with regret. Another neighbor, an elderly woman clutching a small dog, nodded solemnly. "We all should have," she added. As the stepfather was placed in the back of a police car, his bravado cracked. He shouted through the open window, "This isn't over. You'll regret this." His words hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the power he had wielded over Emily and Mia for so long. But the officers slammed the car door shut, silencing his threats. Emily's mother arrived shortly afterward, her face etched with worry. She rushed to embrace her daughter and granddaughter, her relief palpable. "You're safe now," she whispered, her arms wrapping tightly around them. "You'll never have to go back to that monster." The scene outside was winding down, but the emotional weight of what had transpired lingered. One of the officers approached Sam, clapping him on the shoulder. "You did good today," he said. "Your actions made all the difference." Sam nodded, his usual humility intact. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied, though he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. As the police cars began to pull away, Emily turned to Sam, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't have to get involved, but you did. You saved us." Sam met her gaze, his voice steady but kind. "You and Mia deserve to be safe. I'm just glad I could help." Mia stepped forward, wrapping her arms around Sam in a tight hug. "Thank you, Mr. Sam," she said, her voice small but sincere. In that moment, Sam felt the weight of his actions, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the difference one person's courage can make. As the family was guided into a police car to be taken to a safe shelter, Sam watched them leave, his heart heavy but hopeful. He knew their journey to healing was just beginning, but at least they had a chance now. The neighbors began to disperse, the chatter dying down as they returned to their lives, each of them carrying a piece of the story they had just witnessed. For Sam, the morning's events would stay with him forever. As he returned to his truck, he took a moment to reflect, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he had made a difference. and that was something no one could take away. As the chaos subsided, Emily turned to Sam, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you. You didn't have to get involved, but you did. You saved us." Sam shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do. You and Mia deserve to be safe." One of the officers approached Sam, commending his quick thinking. "Your actions made all the difference. You're a hero today." Sam felt a mix of pride and humility. He glanced at Mia, who managed a small smile despite everything she'd been through. In that moment, he realized the profound impact of his decision to act. He couldn't help but wonder how many others might have turned a blind eye to the situation. Emily's mother arrived shortly afterward, embracing her daughter and granddaughter tightly. "Thank you," she said to Sam, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You're the reason they're safe now." As Emily and Mia were guided into a police car to be taken to a safe shelter, Sam watched them leave, his heart heavy but hopeful. He knew their journey to healing was just beginning, but at least they had a chance now. This story is a powerful reminder that even small acts of courage can change lives. If you were moved by this tale of bravery, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of kindness and resilience. Together, we can inspire others to make a difference.